Cool. Well, I'm pretty excited about this one. Not only just because we're past all the craziness of Black Friday, etc. We're coming to the end of the year, but it's also that chance to kind of take a step back and go, how do we make sure we're set up for success next year? So before we go into the detail, I'll just give a quick intro about myself. I've had 14 years within the grocery, beauty, and lifestyle brand space. And actually, prior to that, I was a civil engineer. So actually, my last project I was working on, I was at London Underground, and I can confirm that the work I was doing there, it's still intact, it's still there. So, obviously my work has been impacted in a very small way when I was a graduate civil engineer. As far as the actual work I've done over recent years, it's really been working between startups and global brands across a range of from starting out in field sales across to marketing and e-commerce roles. And what that's kind of given me is a really unique perspective in terms of being a translator between teams. And that's why one of the reasons why I set up Data Made Simple, my consultancy in 2023, to basically help multi-channel brands make better marketing decisions with their data. And so in the case of examples like Google Analytics, it's not just about helping teams understand and use that data, but then effectively communicate that to others as well. Because if you can't communicate effectively, that's key to everything here. So let's just take a step back why we are here today. So, and I love these comics. I think every webinar I've done, Tom Fishburne comics. I think it's so on the money. I've added in the Google Analytics part, but I think it's a really good analogy to which is very common today, where I'll pretend this data I found is reliable, and you pretend to pay any attention to it. And I think that's very much the case with Google Analytics at the moment, where we've been thrown into this world of a new tracking methodology, and then to varying degrees of being able to implement that effectively. So really, the goal here today is to start to trust in your Google Analytics 4 data, so you can start to make better decisions. And I really want it to be, you want to come out of the session and actually have some really clear actions to take away. And it can be as simple as just implementing, some of a couple of templates that I've got. But just as long as we're taking a mini step towards, better understanding of your data, so you can make better decisions. Because I think there's an expectation that, we should know this inside out, but we're very much on a varying scale here. And actually, just before we go on, I would love to know how confident you are today in your Google Analytics data. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all confident, I don't, even trust any of the numbers, to 10, where it's like, okay, no, I'm sorted, I really know what I'm doing. Where on that scale? Do you mind just putting in the chat where you sit? So I'm kind of reading the room a bit. Also, because it's a bit of a funny experience, these webinars where you're talking to a mirror. Okay, about 6, 5, 6. Okay. Okay, so somewhere around the middle, and I think that's pretty common. One second. Okay, so I think the caveat here as well is, in today's landscape, you can't get to that 100% accuracy. You can't get to 100% attribution. So I think what we're trying to do here is move from, maybe the 60, 70, 80% of accuracy to much more towards that 90%, because it gets incrementally harder as you go to that 100%. And then you've got to also take a step back and go, what are we trying to achieve here? Ultimately trying to make better directional judgments. So it doesn't need to always be 100% accurate, as long as you know that it's broadly in the right direction. So I think that's important to highlight. So we'll cover today why revenue in GA4 might not be matching up to the Shopify, whether that's some more commonly underreported, but can also be overreported, and how to fix that. And then actually the benefit of fixing that in boosting ad and email performance with this improved data. And then we'll talk a bit about the channel piece of why you're seeing a large unassigned or direct channel traffic and how to fix that. And then finally, some of the best Shopify apps to help you improve that data quality and uncover better insights. And like I said, this is a Shopify focused webinar, but I'd say that a lot of this, I know one or two in the room who aren't on Shopify, a lot of this will still be very applicable. It's just some of the recommendations at the end will be tailored a bit more towards Shopify. So, and then the final point before we jump into it, why, I think there's sometimes this analogy of like, why should we use Google Analytics? Can I let's just start afresh and start using a different Google Analytics platform? Well, I think getting everything right with Google is a step in the right direction. First of all, particularly if you use Google Ads, having that accurate information within Google Analytics enhances your ability in your Google Ads. And in essence, I know it's a new tool, but it is actually a very good tool for behavior-driven insights. And I have seen over these last few months a lot of improvements from Google to help with that. So out of the box, I think we're all agreed that it's not, it was not an easy journey, but they're heading steps in the right direction. And I think, it is a good uniform source of truth if you do have things set up right. So you don't need to rely on your ad platform or email analytics, because obviously they only see one aspect of your total sales funnel. So I think it is, a really important point there. And finally, of course, it is free, and there are analytics tools out there which can charge quite a sum if on the paid services. So let's jump into it. And actually, I'm going to give you, there is an opportunity for you to dive into your own data today. I don't want it to be a one-way thing. So what I recommend, and I actually mentioned this in the chat, I should have mentioned at the start as well, is if you can open up your Google Analytics now, and what we're going to do is we're going to build a very quick report in Google Analytics, and then we're going to build a really quick report in Shopify. And I'm going to give you a template so you can kind of match side by side to see how different the numbers are. So like I say, so one or two of you who don't have the Shopify access or are using a different platform, perhaps you can do this afterwards, or I can help you through that afterwards. So if you jump into your Google Analytics, and I'll share my screen here as well, and go to expirations. So that's here. And click on the plus for a new blank expiration. Right, in the dimensions here, we're wanting to add, well, first of all, let's to get the time period right. We want to look at the last 30 days, and you want to have dimensions as date, purchase, revenue, purchases. If you haven't even dived into expirations before, no worries at all, because it's really simple place to get started. So if you click the plus button on dimensions and then type in date and tick that, sorry, I'm racing through. So tick the date, import. Incidentally, do say in the chat if I'm going too slow or too fast, so I can happy to slow things down. So with metrics, we're looking for purchase revenue and purchases. So do it in that order, or you can rearrange it afterwards because it's important for the template. So type in purchase in the metric section. So we want purchases, and those, which way around did I get it? Purchase revenue, then purchases. So purchase, and then you import that. Okay, and then before we do, or we can do this afterwards, is in the settings here, it will say show rows. You want that to be at least 50 because we're seeing the last 30 days of data. So if you scroll down in the middle here, go to show rows, 50, or you can do as many as you want. That's always one to watch out for. And then there's various ways you can kind of get this into a table. The quickest way is actually just double clicking on each of them. So double click on date, double click on purchase revenue, and double click on purchases. So now what you're seeing in this test account is sales by day. The final thing you need to check here is make sure the date is ordered by date, so not by purchase revenue. I don't know why it defaults to revenue, because who wants to see your highest days of revenue in this format? So just click on that. Sometimes it's a bit funny. You might need to click on it a couple of times and just make sure you're seeing it the last 30 days. I haven't actually changed that. Last 30 days, and you're seeing it by date. So the date's going down. Okay. Once you're ready, press this export data button here. And then, sorry, actually, I'm just trying to think where it would actually best sit. It might be better as doesn't have to be a Google Sheet. It actually doesn't matter how you do it. I'll do it Google Sheet because you can then see my screen. And then you can import the data. And then you're going to see something like this here. So at this point, I'm just going to share your link in the chat. And incidentally, I'm recording all of this, so if this isn't the right time to be running through this, you can go through it afterwards. But I thought it was really helpful just to kind of use a case study. Now I just need to find that template. Here we go. So if you open that link in the chat, you'll see it's actually set up as a template, so you can import it into your Google Sheets account. Once again, if you haven't got your Google account set up, all good. You can actually download it as Excel. If Excel is I think some companies can't even access Google Sheets, so I can send through an Excel version. Oh, it says, thanks, Rachel. Okay, that was a good point. It's request access, so I need to just make sure there's everyone's got access to that. That is a good point. So if you refresh that now, and I'll accept all those people as well. Probably easiest thing is just to refresh again, and you should be able to get access. Okay, great. So what you want to do there is import or paste your GA4 data into the date, purchase revenue, purchase section here. So paste all that data in there, just as is. And then we're going to repeat this for Shopify. And what we're going to see is how it differs between the two. So I'll keep going just for the sake of time. So if you can now go into Shopify, I don't have a test access, but I can guide you through this process. You go into Shopify and go to reports, create custom report, and then sales over time. I'll leave this open. And then I'll jump back for those who need to see that again in a second. But what I want you to do there is select the last 30 days. And the columns you want is, let me just check I got this right around, because I actually need to, it should be gross sales, then orders, my bad. then. So we're just making sure that we've got it in the right section. So it should be gross sales, then orders. Gross sales, then orders. So by going into the column section at the bottom here, you select orders and gross sales from this columns, and then unselect, I think that's a total sales section there. So just a recap: reports, create custom report, sales over time, and then name it a check title. Then go to the last 30 days, order by day, just make sure it's, again, day sequence, orders and gross sales. So once you've done that, go back to this template again and paste that data as is into this section here of the template. And I know this is going to take a couple of minutes, but I just want to, for those who kind of aren't running along, so we can keep understanding how this is working. What you're going to see is likely a fair discrepancy. You might be seeing, in this case, significantly over reporting from Google Analytics 4, or in many cases, you'll be under reporting. And I think, well, I'll wait another kind of 30 seconds just to see if there's any comments from anyone, if they're really, like, if you just get a sense of if you're significantly under reporting or over reporting when you're doing this. Because what we're going to do after this is then run through why that's happening and how to combat that. I'll give another 30 seconds just because we've gone through a few steps here, and I want to get a bit of feedback if anyone's gone through that process to understand, yeah, if they are under reporting. So for now, I'll move on, and because what you will generally see is a decent underperformance in your purchases. And yeah, okay. So sorry, just reading the chat. Purchase 100%, but revenue can vary. Yeah, so I think that is that in part that's a good thing, that you're matching purchases. And revenue is another kind of piece to understand. But that does suggest that there are some fixes in that case which are being resolved from that. So commonly there is actually an under-reporting versus Shopify and versus any other platform generally. And I'm going to run through why that is. The biggest reason is, or one of the biggest reasons, is where your other sales are coming from. So if you actually go into your analytics, you'll see sales by channel. Online store is generally going to be the majority of sales, but there are lots of other channels. That's Facebook, recharge, which is subscriptions, shop. There can be draft orders, there can be offline orders that aren't accounted for in Google Analytics. I think it's important to kind of, oh, and thanks for the feedback on that as well. Just jumping back to the chat, that does confirm you're underperforming or under tracking revenue and purchases. But it is really important to understand what's going on here. And we're not going to get into the weeds, but I think it's really kind of relevant for us as, e-commerce marketers, managers, to understand what's going on. So as someone shops the site, they go and make a purchase, a tracking script is sent. and that goes through your web browser to Google Analytics. But now think of those third-party checkouts or offline orders or Facebook orders. They don't go through that thank you page. So that's one of the biggest reasons why you don't see that reported in Google Analytics out of the box. And what's another reason for underperformance, under-reporting, sorry? The biggest, actually, I was super surprised by this, is how much ad blockers represent of everyone's usage. So, and this has really climbed since 2014, but, hovering close to 30% of people, this doesn't necessarily mean they're using it day in, day out, but they do, once over a month, they are using it almost 30 times. So 30%. Again, let's go back to that chart, because this is, again, really important concept to understand. So in this case, some consumers going onto the website to purchase, and they make that purchase, and the tracking script fires. It's supposed to go through the web browser, like Chrome and Safari, but the ad blocker blocks that. It blocks not just the ads, it blocks all measurements tracking generally. So that doesn't send that data to Google Analytics. This is where server-side tracking comes in. And let's follow the same process. So we've gone through that, and actually, yeah, generally 20 to 30% of your sales can be lost, not just through ad blockers and sales, but other sources as well. So this is where server-side tracking basically works by recording sales through your own website and then reporting that directly to Google Analytics. I'm just keeping this really high level because I don't want to kind of get into the weeds. But ultimately, what that means is that you're tracking an extra 20%, or that lost tracking that you had got through this route, you're recovering it through what's called server-side tracking. Now, yeah, it sounds complicated. What do we do here? I'm not going to implement a server on my Shopify, etc. Now, unfortunately, there are solutions out there that make that easy, and I'm very agnostic to what solutions are used. I think the important thing is that you have the understanding of what they are, and kind of emphasis that it isn't an analytics platform. It's to help feed that data into the likes of a Google Analytics. So just to quickly touch upon each of these, Slide Rules that's a free app that does basically what I was mentioning here. It recovers 20% of that tracking, so it feeds all the accurate information into Google Analytics. Another couple are Elevar and Little Data. I'm a big fan of Elevar. They actually have if you'd like to get into the weeds, they have a really good podcast. I think it's called the Conversion Tracking Playbook. And they're just really transparent about what they're doing, where the digital landscape is going. They do get a little bit into the weeds sometime, and they recognize this. So there is a point where you want to follow the episodes where taking a step back first, if that's your first podcast you're listening to. Little Data is always already a similar one, which has been also around for a few years, and there are others out there. But the reason I'm kind of highlighting these two in particular, and Slide Rules, is that there is a distinction between these paid solutions and the free one, is that they have this extra ability to send back that traffic to the likes of Facebook, Klaviyo for your email platform, or Attentive, or whichever email platform you use. Klaviyo is most common with Shopify. And I'm just going to touch upon this now, because this is probably like where the easiest kind of win as e-commerce teams have, and I think the reason why this isn't implemented is because of this lack of understanding of what server-side tracking is, and why should I be paying for it, kind of thing. So this is a really important concept. So look at the same chart again. What if you remember? We went, most commonly, traditionally, there was a tracking script that went through your web browser. You lost 20 to 30% of the tracking. Now, I was just talking about Google Analytics, but you're also losing the tracking that would have gone to Klaviyo, Attentive, your ad platforms. And it's not just the purchase data that you're losing that tracking for. You're losing everything, every kind of queue for these platforms to basically help you retarget better. So by, if you're losing 20 or 30% of your traffic, you're then denying those platforms the ability to help you better, in your retargeting. So if you kind of look at this chart, you can actually think of this then as feeding this back all the way to the start to be able to retarget the consumer better, because you've got 20% more data points than you did before. So in the case of, this was, I think, from Elevar. In the case of Elevar, from before implementing to after implementing, you're generally seeing up to 2 times abandoned cart recoveries, and then on Meta, 20+% increase in ad sales and reduction in cost per click. And that's all because we're sending more data to the likes of Facebook, Klaviyo, to then, in Klaviyo's sake, be able to send more abandoned cart emails. So there's a lot that we've got taken in there, and we've dived through a lot. And I just want to kind of check in at this point that you understand that concept of what the difference between server-side tracking is and client-side tracking. Okay, that's great. Thanks for the feedback, Daniel. Because it's super confusing, and it's taken me a long time to kind of really get to grips with, because it's quite, and also then take a step back and go, because some of these platforms do explain it sometimes quite complexly, and there's not even a word, but it's really just trying to simplify that and actually explain that so we can then make the right decisions of going, okay, I understand what this is now. I should be implementing it. Yeah, that's great, Rachel. Good. So I'm now going to just move on to touch upon the channel tracking part. But I just want to check before we go if there's any. I'll give another 20 seconds just if there's any questions about this, and I'll send this deck afterwards if it's helpful. I'd certainly send a recording. But yeah, my recommendation overall, just because I think they're so transparent about what they're doing, not that there's any well, in some cases, some services can kind of show this, oh, we've just got a magic source and this is, we're not going to give it away. Whereas Elevar is really transparent about it. So my recommendation, it is a paid fee, but I think you'll get that back depending on what revenue it's sitting at. Okay, well, let's jump into a bit more of the tracking piece. So we've now looked at what why you're seeing discrepancy in your revenue. And then we want to look at how we're seeing a discrepancy in your traffic and your traffic source. So let's jump back into Google Analytics for a second. If you go into the analytics section, and where I'll probably start is just kind of giving a really quick explainer is just go to reports. And then this will look different for each instance, but if you've got something like lifecycle acquisition, you're looking for the traffic acquisition section. So just look through the other sections if you're not seeing this, but you're looking for traffic acquisition, that's what it's called. And then this is a test instance, so it's I think a bit over the top in the sense of how much unassigned traffic there is. But what you can instantly see is how much unassigned, and sometimes, you might be looking at one and it's got a lot of direct traffic. Now, there's a couple ways we can kind of quickly understand what's driving that high unassigned traffic. And what I want to start with is, and I'm not going to go into detail on this, but there's probably 10 or 20 reasons for why we talk about moving from that 60% to 80% accuracy, right? We're not going to get to that 100% understanding of where your traffic is coming from. And it's important to just understand some of these, but the most important being, what are the elements that you can control so you can then make better marketing investment from. And I think that the key one I want to take away here is UTM parameters. So UTM parameters are the string at the end of your URL when you're running campaigns that will define which channel that should sit in, that user should sit in, at least, whether that's social, search, etc. And a good way to understand what Google is seeing today is going back into Google Analytics, going into the traffic acquisition section. And then we're going to, I'll start with a really quick way. And then what we're going to do is then after that, you remember that exploration report we built? We're going to add a tab and then also build these checks into that tab as well. So you've kind of got this always on like exploration that you can kind of check, sense check. So go to session default channel grouping. That's generally what is set as the primary dimension. And then if you look here, you'll see traffic source there's a plus button here. Click traffic source. And then you're looking for session source medium. Or you can type it in, you can session source / medium. And what you can also do at this point, or you can do it beforehand, is I just want to see the unassigned part. So I'm going to type in unassigned in the search box. And now we're seeing all the unassigned traffic by source. Now, there's this big one here. If you look at the proportion of total users, and then you can also look across to the revenue as well. In this case, and it just depends on brand by brand, we're seeing a huge amount of not set. I'm not going to focus on that today because there's a lot that isn't controllable in that. But what I will focus on is you might be seeing things like this, which is FBIG. Now, this all depends how you're naming your campaigns. But what I can see here is that this should be it's Facebook and Instagram. It should sit in the organic search in this case, or paid search. It really depends how you set up your campaigns. So I'm not going to run through today like how to retrospectively fix that. But what I do want to touch upon is how can you set that up correctly for future. So we're now just going to create an exploration. So jump back over to the explorations and then go to that exploration you created earlier. And just name it if you haven't already. So call it accuracy checks. Now you see a plus button at the top here. Click on that. And you want to add a new free form table tab. And incidentally, you can name these as well. So you can call it revenue checks and channel checks. Right, so this time we don't need date, but we can leave this here because this is for this left-hand side is the variables for the whole report. So you can actually leave this here and then you populate into this section here. So what I want you to add here is in the dimensions, we'll click the plus button. And then I want you to add session source medium. You just type in the top session source / medium. and then session, you can keep typing session, and then you're looking for session default channel group. Here it is, session default channel group. You want to import that. And incidentally, if some of you have already done these custom channel groupings, this won't necessarily be as applicable, or you could actually put that custom channel groupings in there just to cross-check that. And then in the metrics, you want to add, let me think here. So we're looking at sessions. And you can keep purchase revenue and purchases there. So now we want to add these over to the table. So we don't need everything, but again, do that double click thing. So let's start with the channel group. So double click on that, then double click on the source medium, and double click on, let's just stick with sessions. And well, you can add all of them actually. Sessions, purchases, and revenue. So what you'll now be seeing is how Google sees as a default channel group, how it categorizes all your traffic. And then in the session source medium, this is generally coming from your UTM parameters. So what we can see here, like I highlighted earlier, we've got in unassigned, we've got Facebook and Instagram. So that's something that we can fix with better UTM tracking. And I'll touch upon how to go about that in a second. But it is worth kind of looking through all of this as well and looking through all your sources and going, hey, why am I seeing, this is quite common that you'd see SMS in the email channel and this kind of thing. So then, if you're looking at your channel report and you're seeing really high email, then you're realizing that actually it's not necessarily accurate, is because it's feeding in other channel information. So the most valuable thing I'd recommend here is to actually export that data and actually go through that as a spreadsheet and go, no, this doesn't feel right. That isn't right. You can also, if you just want to see unassigned, for instance, you can do a filter at the bottom of the settings section and then go to session default channel grouping. Exactly matches unassigned. And you click apply. So now you're only seeing the unassigned traffic. So that's great to know. Okay, well, it's all categorized wrong. Now what? So I think like I said, the biggest impact you can make is getting correct UTM parameters. And this is where a UTM tracking sheet is really helpful. So this one should, let me just paste this into chat, and it should be unlocked, so you should be able to access it. And then you just click use template at the top right. And we're not going to populate any of this today, but I just want to briefly show you how it works. So in here is where you put your URL, your brand URL, and then the medium, source, and campaigns, and all these other factors that you can include in your UTMs, which feed into Google Analytics. Now, if you're not sure where to start with this, I've actually built out some pre-made templates, because what happens particularly with ad platforms is you're working with multiple different campaigns, multiple different ads. You're not going to update every single ad with a different UTM parameter. But what you can do with the likes of, for instance, Facebook ads, is you can add the same code at the bottom of every campaign, and then it will populate based on what campaign that is. So just so I can complete this.com. Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, yeah. I thought that might be the case. I'll make sure this is available in a in Excel sheet as well, because sorry, I was just looking at the chat because some can't access Google Sheets. But I'll show you how it works. So basically, this pre-populates all all the information that would be sitting in your Facebook ads. So for instance, it would correctly label the campaign name, so you know where your customers are coming from, where your users are coming from. I'll run through a later stage, another time. I can run through where you kind of paste that code in say Facebook ads. But you can also do this for say you've got Instagram influencers that you want to include. This is the correct medium and source you want to add for Instagram. And then you might add your influencer name in here, so you can then look at it in a report in Google Analytics. So I don't want to get any deeper on this, because you can cover a whole session just on this alone. I think the important thing I wanted to run across here was why you're seeing high unassigned traffic. One of the major reasons generally is because of not correct UTM parameters. And this is a solution to make sure that the whole team are across this and using it. One final point, because I want to leave a bit of time if there are any final questions, but what you'll generally see in social, in the case of organic social particularly, sometimes even paid, actually commonly paid social as well, is that the social proportion of your total traffic or revenue is pretty low, which doesn't always make sense. And I think it's important to highlight why that is. So I actually put a post out about this very recently, but this was an example of a Google Analytics account where they were seeing a lot of SMS, email, referral, even paid search as a proportion of their total sales, but their paid social and organic social was very low, which didn't make sense. But then what they had done, they'd already had a post-purchase survey integrated. So that's at the end of the Shopify flow. Once on the thank you page, it says, where did you hear about us? And notice here, Instagram sits right at the top as the most popular, and Facebook is very high as well. And I think this is a really important concept, because what you're seeing in Google Analytics is purely based on what Google Analytics can track in the first place. And they're not going to track your first interaction with the brand. So I think sometimes we can forget that social is a really important first touch point. And I know that's certainly the case for some teams who are really data driven and don't necessarily understand the value that social can bring in the overall channel mix. So what I would recommend as well is installing a post-purchase survey. So this is an example of one where, how did you hear about us? And then you can, the customer, generally like 30% of those customers actually fill that in, and that can help you in your understanding. A couple of solutions here. There's one called No Commerce, and there's one called Fairing, and they're both good. No has a free tier. Fairing has I think it's it's good starting point pricing. The one advantage to Fairing is that it integrates with Google Analytics. But I think what's most important is that you're kind of using this as an overall understanding your attribution generally. You might want to build that out as a separate spreadsheet, for instance. But even if we're not going into the detail here, the one recommendation I would say is install, if you're on a budget, No Commerce, but they're also very, very good as you're scaling up as well, and then Fairing too. So we're just coming to the final parts of this now, but I did want to kind of touch upon some of the Shopifys that help you improve that data quality and uncover better insights. And I don't want to overwhelm you with more tools here, but I do want you to have this reference here to kind of understand how everything fits together. So I'll just touch upon this for a minute. We've obviously talked through the point of improving conversions and accuracy. Those three tools, Slide Rules Analytics, the free one, Elevar, and Little Data, all good solutions. And there are others, incidentally, but I'll touch upon those in a second. Analytics and reporting. Obviously, Google Analytics is a really good platform. I know out of the box it isn't, but it just has a lot of capabilities, and I think that be hesitant to switching to other solutions before really investing in Google Analytics. But what I would say is Looker is a natural extension to that. So you can start to build out much more customized reports for your needs, because Looker is owned by Google, and there's the Looker Studio, it used to be called Data Studio, which syncs in nicely with that. And if you are kind of a bigger brand with much more complex, or not even complex, but advanced needs, and most importantly, you have the kind of capabilities in-house to do this. The Audacity is a really good platform, like a unified e-commerce and omni-channel platform. Customer insights. So again, there's so many in here. I've just picked some ones that I've really got some good insights from. I've really liked Lifetimely. There is a free tier in there. It just gives you really interesting insights into customer return rates at what periods, and just these really visual charts to help you inform future purchases. So whilst Google Analytics is good as a behavioral tool, some of the insights, some of the apps that integrate with Shopify can give you much deeper customer understanding, because obviously Shopify has all this customer data. And of course, the platform itself you can use. I mentioned about these two post-purchase surveys, the campaign tracking, which we touched upon as well. Final point about attribution, and Triple Whale, some of you might be familiar with, and some of you are probably using, and it's a really good analytics platform. I think the problem they're trying to solve is not just in better reporting, but also better attribution too. Now, Triple Whale does have elements of this, server-side tracking in it. It's called the Triple Whale Pixel. My one kind of challenge to Triple Whale is it is really evolving as a big platform. The pricing is one factor, and two is I do think, as far as the server-side tracking and sending that data back to improve conversions from other platforms, the Elevar and even Little Data does really well here. So that's just a consideration when you're looking at that, because that's almost supposed to replace Google Analytics in there, but you do have to pay for it. And finally, I don't use these as much. I think Ilan, we should is an expert on this kind of stuff, but just more on the CRO journey. Hotjar and Clarity are always good ones to start with. So just before we get into any questions, I just want to touch upon 3 things that we've talked about here. So one is, how do you improve your accuracy of your revenue when you're comparing Shopify or any platform to Google Analytics? One of the biggest answers, the most obvious answers, is installing a server-side tracking solution. Most are out of the box now. You don't need in-house skills for this. 2 is to improve your channel mapping using the right UTMs to reduce that unassigned traffic. And then 3 is to improve that customer understanding and overall attribution model. I'd highly recommend post-purchase surveys, because it just gives you that insight, and you're not just restricted to asking, where did you first hear about it, but is this a gift for someone? So you can understand, okay, well, actually, we should be tailoring our marketing activity towards gifting, right? And how that shifts over the time of year. The final thing is, I am offering free audits if you do want to do, get all of this sorted all at once. Basically, we've gone through a lot of those first parts that we talked about. I've built now into a structured platform, so you can actually see the last 30 days purchases, how you're tracking, and then also to see how your direct traffic is, your not set, and other traffic is. But then also going into the data collection, making sure everything's set up correctly there, the integrity, making sure the accuracy is all there, and then all the conversion tracking generally, making sure you have the right setup. So if you're interested in this, there's a QR code below for this. Now, and I'll be, fully transparent with all of that. Of course, I want to work with you beyond that, but actually at the same time, I would much rather give really customized recommended actions that you can take away in-house, or get anyone else to do. So at least, if there are other, I just want to make sure that you're getting the most value out of these kind of opportunities, because there's so much work to do to get businesses to this level that we're at now, and then there's much opportunities for beyond that, which I'm excited about. So I think we've got a few minutes for any questions, and I've just seen Martin's question. Is there a way to exclude bounce traffic from reporting? I don't know whether I understand. Exclude bounce traffic from reporting. Oh, sorry. Yes, I think if I understand that correctly, if you go into, let me just move things over. So if you go into the reports here, you'll see, and this, I always default to this traffic acquisition report. You'll see here at the top, customize report. What I'm assuming you mean here is in here. You don't want to see it in here, but just clarify if you don't. If you scroll to the top, customize report, if you don't see that, it means you haven't got the edit permissions. So you just need to get the right permissions to do that. And then when you're in there, you click on the, sorry, not dimensions, the metrics, and then you can remove, yeah, that's right, exclude bounce traffic from reporting. Maybe I misunderstood. Martin, we'll reconnect afterwards, because I think I might have misunderstood that. But just just clarify on that at a later stage. Are there any other questions? Now, did I get asked at the last session, is like, do you actually do any training? And I think it's a valid point, but I'm not always clear on like what what my service offering is. And I think absolutely, my focus, and the thing that, going back to the start, my goal here is to really help teams understand that data better and be able to communicate that better. So that all feeds into this. And I think GA4 is a really great place to start, because all teams are completely almost overwhelmed by this and don't know where to start, and it's completely understandable. So I think my first focus is around Google Analytics for audits, and then tune-ups, and then Google Analytics for training, so helping teams, again, be able to understand and then communicate that to others. And then that ties in nicely with other data skills training. So again, making sure you're understanding what's the so what of your data, so you can take better actions. And then another area which I really enjoy is just unifying reporting data to help you make better decisions there as well. So, there's more data than ever, offline, etc. How can you make the right decisions for each of those? Okay, great. Well, I hope you found it valuable, and great. Thanks for the feedback there, Daniel. And I just want to make sure you are able to implement some of this stuff. So my challenge to you is, don't go away and then move into the next meeting. We're going into Christmas. Use some of that time to really look into some of these solutions. I'm happy to chat more about it, and just get it done. And otherwise, just have a really great Christmas, and I'm sure we'll catch up in the new year. Great. Thank you, guys.